Do you ever walk into a room and instantly feel exhausted, and you don't even know why? The lights aren't too bright, no one said anything harsh, but your body tightens, your mind begins to scan, and suddenly you just want to escape. For most people, overstimulation is an inconvenience, but for a highly sensitive person, it's an invisible storm, and it comes quickly. Because for you, the world doesn't just exist, it penetrates. You don't just hear the noise, you absorb it. You don't just see the expression, you feel what's behind it. And that constant input, it becomes too much, too fast, too often. You live in a culture that glorifies hustle and overload, where more is better, where noise equals relevance, where silence feels like failure. But here's the problem. Your nervous system was never designed to process this much. Not at this speed, not at this volume, not all the time. And so you burn out. Not from laziness, not from weakness, but from overload. The hidden cost of overstimulation isn't just fatigue. It's self-doubt. It's shame. It's believing there's something wrong with you. But what if there's nothing wrong with you at all? What if your exhaustion is actually a sign of deep attunement, not dysfunction? What if the very thing that breaks you down is also what makes you uniquely awake? In this video, we'll explore why HSPs burn out faster than others and what science says about it, the real cost of constant sensory and emotional input, how overstimulation silently damages your identity and self-worth, and most importantly, how to protect your energy without shutting down who you are. Because feeling deeply in a chaotic world is not your flaw. It's your superpower if you learn how to wield it. So, here's the great question we're asking today. What happens when a deeply sensitive nervous system meets a world that never stops? And how do you survive that without losing yourself? The world doesn't look dangerous to most people. It's just a buzzing cafe, a crowded train, an open office with 10 conversations at once. But for a highly sensitive person, HSP, that ordinary environment can feel like an assault. Why? Because your nervous system isn't just observing the world, it's interpreting, processing, and feeling it all at once. This is the hidden layer no one sees, the chronic overstimulation that becomes your baseline. A subtle flood of sensory and emotional input, light, noise, emotions, micro-expressions, unsaid tension, constantly flowing in. Overstimulation is not about weakness. It's about intensity of perception. Your brain, especially the insula and amygdala, reacts more strongly to external cues. Studies show that HSPs process sensory data more deeply, which means you don't just register a signal, you internalize it. What others brush off, you absorb. What others overlook, you notice. And what others forget still echoes in you hours later. This creates a silent conflict. Because the modern world rewards speed, service, and stimulation, while your system longs for stillness, depth, and recovery. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once said, "The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him." That's what it's like for a deep feeler in a shallow culture. The world says, "Move on." But your mind whispers, "Not yet." The psychological trap. Overstimulation doesn't just tire you out, it begins to reshape your identity. You start questioning, why can't I handle what others do? Am I too sensitive? Too dramatic? Not strong enough? This self-questioning is where burnout begins, not in your environment, but in your internal narrative. In truth, your responses are appropriate. What's inappropriate is a system that demands you be numb to survive. Psychologist Elaine Aron, who first defined the HSP trait, notes that sensitivity evolved as a survival mechanism, not a flaw. You are wired to pick up early warning signs, to notice danger, beauty, and meaning in subtle patterns. But that same sensitivity in a hyper-stimulating world becomes a burden. It's like having high-definition hearing in a world of sirens. Your perception is a gift, but without boundaries, it becomes pain. Philosophical roots, the war on stillness. We live in an age that fears silence. Distraction is a drug. Speed is worshipped. Stillness is seen as laziness. But as Blaise Pascal once said, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. For the sensitive person, quiet is medicine. It's the only space where the mind can settle, the nervous system reset, and identity regather. But overstimulation steals that from you, not just through noise, but through emotional crowding. Even digital life overstimulates, scrolling, comparing, absorbing pain that's not yours. And over time, that input creates a soul-level fatigue, not just tiredness, emptiness. The HSP brain isn't broken, it's just overloaded. The real problem isn't sensitivity, it's lack of recovery. Your system works too hard for too long, with no break, no buffer. And eventually, your body goes into shutdown, brain fog, emotional numbness, sudden withdrawal, loss of joy. Call it burnout, but in truth, it's your system begging for mercy. So, what's the hidden problem? It's not that you feel too much. It's that you've never been taught how to protect what you feel. The world pushed you to toughen up, but what you really needed was to learn how to regulate, restore, and respect your energy. And that's where we go next. The danger of overstimulation isn't just in the moment. It's in what it leaves behind. Because when your system is flooded again and again, you start to build walls you don't remember constructing. At first, it's subtle. You leave gatherings earlier than you used to. You stop answering calls. You avoid places that once brought joy, not because you don't care, but because you're too drained to engage. And then comes the guilt. You begin to think, why can't I handle this? Why am I so weak? What's wrong with me? This is one of the most dangerous consequences of overstimulation. Self-blame, masquerading as self-reflection. You internalize the noise and begin to silence yourself. You shrink your life to reduce the overload. And in doing so, you shrink yourself. The disconnection spiral. At first, overstimulation leads to fatigue, then to avoidance, then to isolation. You start choosing safety over joy, control over spontaneity, solitude over connection. And yet, deep down, you still crave what you're avoiding. This inner tug-of-war slowly erodes your sense of identity. You stop trusting your instincts. You begin to think your sensitivity is the problem, that if you were stronger, more normal, less emotional, life would be easier. And in that lie, your light begins to dim. The physical toll. Overstimulation doesn't stay in the mind. It moves into the body. You feel it as chronic tension in your shoulders or chest, sleep that doesn't restore, brain fog, headaches, or sudden fatigue, nervous system hangovers after social interaction. This isn't weakness. This is your biology asking you to slow down. When cortisol and adrenaline keep firing, your body stops healing, your immune system weakens, inflammation rises, and what began as just noise becomes a chronic health pattern. The loss of inner clarity. One of the cruelest effects of constant overstimulation is the way it clouds your inner voice. When you're always reacting, always managing input, always staying alert, you lose access to your own truth. You begin living externally, seeking validation, avoiding rejection, monitoring reactions, and the deeper self, the one that knows, that feels, that creates, gets buried under noise. You stop asking, "What do I want?" and instead ask, "What will make this more tolerable?" It's not a life, it's survival. Emotional disconnection. Eventually, to protect yourself, you begin to numb, not deliberately. It happens slowly. You become less reactive, but also less alive, less anxious, but also less inspired, less triggered, but also less connected. This is the cost no one talks about. To avoid overwhelm, you begin to shut down parts of yourself that made you human. Curiosity, playfulness, joy, wonder, even love begins to feel like a risk, a philosophical wound. As Nietzsche wrote, "Invisible threads are the strongest ties." But what happens when those invisible threads, your sensitivity, intuition, empathy, are always strained? You begin to question your place in the world. You feel too much for the cold, and too quiet for the loud, too deep, too tender, too raw. So you hide. Not because you want to disappear, but because you're tired of explaining your existence. This is the hidden cost. Not just being overstimulated, but being misunderstood, misjudged, misplayed. But what if? What if the problem isn't that you feel too much, but that you were never taught how to feel safely? What if you don't need to toughen up, but to come home to yourself? Because the world may be loud, but you don't have to lose yourself in the noise. And that's where we go next. You were never meant to live in survival mode. You were meant to feel, not collapse, to sense deeply, not shut down, to connect, not withdraw. And so begins the quiet rebellion. Not the rebellion of noise, anger, or force, but the rebellion of presence, of boundaries, of choosing yourself in a world that demands your exhaustion. Because to be sensitive in a world that profits from your numbness is already an act of resistance. 1. Reclaiming the pause. Your first act of rebellion is this: slow down. Not because you're falling behind, but because you're moving differently. Create deliberate pauses in your day. Not scrolling breaks, not avoidance, but stillness. Ask yourself throughout the day, is this mine? Or am I carrying it for someone else? This one question can reset your nervous system in seconds. Because much of your overstimulation comes not from events, but from the weight of what doesn't belong to you. 2. Anchor attention in the present. Your mind is powerful, but it's not designed to process everything at once. Use the focus anchor technique. Sit quietly for 2 minutes. Choose one sensory input, a sound, your breath, the light on the wall. Keep your focus on it. When your mind drifts, gently return. This practice isn't just calming, it builds mental boundaries. It tells your system, you don't have to process everything. As Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. That space, it's your sanctuary. 3. Reduce ambient noise, even the emotional kind. You don't just react to loud sounds, you react to loud people, conflicting energies, even unspoken emotions. Begin identifying invisible noise, conversations that drain, environments that irritate, media that agitates. You don't need to cut everything out, but you do need filters. One simple practice. After each interaction, ask, do I feel fuller or emptier? Let that guide your boundaries, not guilt. 4. Build micro-restoration rituals. You don't need a retreat. You need moments of return throughout your day. Try 5 minutes in natural light, touching a grounding object like stone or wood. Journaling 3 lines about how you feel. Gentle breathwork before a conversation. These are not luxuries. They are maintenance for your sensitivity. 5. Shift your inner narrative. Start noticing the voice that says, I'm too much. I need to toughen up. I'll never be enough. Then replace it with this, my depth is not a defect, it's a compass. You were not built wrong. You were just never taught how to live right in a system that doesn't honor depth. Let your sensitivity inform, not define, your experience. 6. Reintroduce joyful stimulation. Not all stimulation is harmful. Some of it heals, restores, awakens. For HSPs, the key is intentional, nourishing input. Music that softens you. Art that stirs something ancient. Movement that reconnects you to your body. Deep conversation with people who see you. These are your nutrients. Without them, you're not protecting your sensitivity, you're starving it. 7. Practice emotional minimalism. You don't have to fix everything you feel. You only need to feel it. Then let it pass. Overstimulation often tricks you into overprocessing. You spiral. Replay. Instead, try this. Name it. This is anxiety. Locate it. It's in my chest. Allow it. It's okay to feel this. Release it. I don't have to hold it all. This is what real emotional hygiene looks like. 8. Connect with other deep feelers. Isolation amplifies overstimulation. It cuts you off from perspective. Find your kind, even one person who gets it, who doesn't ask you to be less or quieter or faster, can become a mirror that restores your self-trust. And that's what we want. The quiet revolution. You are not here to keep up. You are here to tune in. You are not fragile. You are finely tuned. And in a world addicted to noise, your stillness is power. Your perception is clarity. Your boundary is wisdom. This is your rebellion. To stop breaking yourself to fit what was never designed for you. To start building a life where your sensitivity can breathe and even thrive. We spend so much of our lives trying to adapt to the noise, to the pace, to the world that never slows down. And if you're a highly sensitive person, you've probably spent years trying to get stronger, to be less affected, to grow a thicker skin, to not feel so much. But here's the truth. You don't need to harden. You need to honor the way you were made. Let's look back for a moment. Everything we've explored, the overstimulation, the invisible burnout, the quiet shame, it all comes from a misunderstanding that sensitivity is a problem to fix, but it's not. It's a language, a different way of perceiving, a different way of being. Your nervous system is not broken. It's a compass. What the world calls too much is often just unfiltered awareness. You sense things others miss. You notice the tension in a room before words are spoken. You feel the shift in someone's mood before they even realize it themselves. That's not fragility. That's depth. And it's time we stop apologizing for it. Instead of fighting your nervous system, start listening to it. Ask, what is this discomfort trying to teach me? Where do I feel most regulated? What brings me home to myself? The more you listen, the less you'll need to escape. Sensitivity is not a wall, it's a door. The world may push you to be louder, quicker, more productive. But you know that real presence doesn't come from speed. It comes from stillness. You don't have to live reactively. You can create space. You can choose softness over shutdown. You can hold boundaries without guilt. And slowly, that sensitivity you once saw as a burden becomes a guide. It teaches you who's safe to be around, what lights your inner fire, when your energy needs protecting, and where your deepest joy lives. Your healing isn't about changing who you are. It's about returning to who you've always been, that quiet child who noticed everything, who asked big questions, who cried easily but loved fiercely. The world taught you to doubt that part, to silence it, to push through, to be normal. But normal was never your path. Your path is depth, it's nuance, it's aliveness in places others have gone numb. And in a world that forgets to feel, your sensitivity is not a flaw, it's a form of remembrance. The power of choosing yourself. At the end of the day, burnout doesn't come from sensitivity, it comes from abandoning yourself to meet the demands of a system that doesn't see you. And healing begins the moment you say, I am allowed to be as I am, and build a life around that truth. That means saying no, even when it disappoints others, resting without needing to justify it, letting go of roles that keep you small, and choosing people, places, and rhythms that nourish you. This is not selfish. This is sacred. You were never too much. You were just unprotected. The truth is, sensitivity is not the reason you burned out. Lack of tools was. Lack of support was. Lack of language was. But now you have it. You have awareness, you have practices, you have permission, and with that comes a new kind of power. Not the loud kind, the rooted kind. Maybe you'll always feel a little more than others. Maybe crowds will always overwhelm you. Maybe your heart will always break open a bit more easily. But maybe that's not something to fix. Maybe that's something to trust, because in a world that's numbed itself with noise, you still feel. And that in itself is a radical act of being alive.